Hey there YouTube, this is Rajita from Keep Calm and Read All, and welcome to my very first video of what I have read so far. So this is going to be a twice in a month thing where I basically round up everything that I have read so far. Now, June has been the month of marathons. That's right, I basically sat down, decided that I'm going to have lots of cup of coffee and I am just going to read one book after the other after the other. This month I've basically done two different marathons. The first one was Sherlock Holmes, and the second one was the Bailey shortlist for the prize for women's fiction. Now, I love doing marathons. I mean, to just forget everything and just sit and read and just read one book after the other. That is basically what I love so much about reading. And I'm the kind of a person who basically burrows into books and is completely escapes from this world. If you give me a few books and I've thought, okay, I'm going to read all of these books over the course of, let's say, 2 or 3 days, I just do it. I don't even think about it. I we I have this group of bookish friends, and we do these readathons every month or so where we decide on a book and or we decide on a series and we just go on reading. We basically compare reading speeds, we compare notes on the books, we compare which one is actually going to be on the finish line first. That is something that I enjoy a lot. Readathons are a lot of fun simply because you can just go on and on and on for that period of time, and you basically have nothing else to worry about during that point of time. So, coming back to the point, June has been the month of marathons. The first week of June was basically dedicated to Sherlock Holmes. That's right, I basically marathoned through the entire short stories and novels of Sherlock Holmes, and I was like, I was in heaven. I mean, I have grown up reading the stories of, hearing about the stories of Sherlock Holmes. I have basically read, I mean, I've heard my mother reading it to me as a child. I basically have seen the 1984. I actually grew up seeing the 1984 BBC TV series because one of my uncles is a huge Sherlock Holmes fan and he used to watch them a long time back. He used to get these DVDs and he would watch it on the TV, and whenever we would visit, he would probably be watching one of those videos and we would be watching alongside him. So that's the kind of a heritage that I had, like this hearing about it, this watching videos, but I haven't actually sat down and read through the entire oeuvre of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in connection to Sherlock Holmes. And I was like, okay, it's high time that I do that. It's high time that I read. And if someone asks me, oh, can you tell me which episode was this story based on, like in season 4, the second episode, I was confused as to what story was this episode based on, and I talked to my uncle, and even he had no idea. Then when I read the entire works of Sherlock Holmes, I was like, oh, okay, it's from the Dying Detective. Now I get it. Okay, it makes sense right now. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, to discover this whole new side of the stories that you have grew up hearing, the stories that you have grown up watching. And it also helped that I had this amazing edition that I just got last month. Hold on. This is like my current baby right now. I mean, how can it not be? This is such a beautiful edition of Sherlock Holmes. This is the Barnes and Noble leather-bound classics, and I mean, come on, how can you not be in love with it when you see this beautiful spine, this beautiful front cover, the gilded pages, And what I loved about this was it was so easy to read. It was so easy to just turn the page over and over, just read one after the other. And I was like, oh God, I am in love. After this, I just could not put the book down. I just kept reading one novel after the other, one story after the other, and it took me, I think, about a week to get through it. What I enjoyed a lot about Sherlock Holmes was the fact that how he still manages to capture the capture the reader's imagination even 150 years after their publication. I mean, you remember what happened during the Victorian age, right? When Conan Doyle killed off Sherlock Holmes, there was this absolute uproar. The readers basically wanted him to bring Sherlock Holmes back, and he eventually bowed to popular opinion and brought Sherlock Holmes back in The Empty House. So that's the kind of, even now, like when you look at the BBC Sherlock Holmes, the BBC Sherlock series, you basically see the same thing. After the Reichenbach falls, Sherlock actually returns in The Empty Hearse. And even now, when there are rumors that Sherlock will not be coming back, there are still a lot of people out there who are wanting, or who still want, the detective to come back, even if it's just for 3 episodes a year or in every 2 years. So that's what I keep thinking, the kind of popularity that this detective enjoys. Every time I read a story, I was like, okay, I love the way he operates. He is an extremely charming character. He's an extremely memorable character. You cannot simply read a story and think, oh, okay, interesting. Although I think the stories themselves, probably because we've had the detective fiction evolve so much, you can kind of see some of the stories, you can kind of see where it's going, but what you don't see is the detective's process itself. I think that's where Conan Doyle has achieved an absolute success. This, where he has attributed that kind of a time, he has devoted that kind of a time to actually think about the detective's process, to lay it out for the readers, in the sense that when Sherlock Holmes makes a pronouncement, when he says, okay, this is how it is, that's when you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then you think, oh, is this for real? But then you are absolutely swept away by the various discoveries of Sherlock Holmes. Now, for me, my favorite stories of this were to do with the various gemstones, or the recovery of various gemstones that have been lost or being stolen. My absolute favorite is the Blue Carbuncle. I heard that story when I think I was in 4th standard, which was I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and I remember the story of the Blue Carbuncle, and I was fascinated with that idea, the stone which is hidden in the goose's throat, and it's suddenly discovered when you have the commissioner taking it home for Christmas dinner. And that is one story that has stayed with me, and when I read it again, I was like, oh my God, that's like my childhood memory right there. So I think that's another one of the popularities of Sherlock Holmes. You grew up reading the stories, much as I grew up hearing about stories of Hindu mythology, hearing about stories of Indian history, Indian regional literature. It's the same thing. It's basically juxtaposed with reading various English classics like Sherlock Holmes. And my mother was a huge fan, so she used to read, basically tell us stories of Sherlock Holmes. So I think that's another reason for the popularity of Sherlock Holmes, basically. And and to marathon it after such a long time, to marathon it now, when not only do you understand the stories, the nuances of the story, but you can also enjoy the things that as a child maybe you didn't understand or you looked over. So that was my marathoning of Sherlock Holmes. Please let me know what your favorite Sherlock Holmes stories are. I would love to know it. Please comment below and let me know. I would love to start a discussion about the various stories that you have found fascinating, and basically go from there. My favorite stories of Sherlock Holmes basically were, of course, the study, A Study in Scarlet. That's where Watson and Sherlock Holmes meet, and they decide to take rooms at 221B Baker Street. Of course, that just sends a kind of a thrill down my spine. Then, of course, Sign of 4. I actually enjoyed the entire complex narrative, and what I liked about it was the ending itself, because it's not all glories and it's not all oh my god, sure, look at the acumen of the mind of Sherlock Holmes, but it also is that there are times where he is actually outwitted, not completely, but sufficiently outwitted so that you realize that he is a human after all. Scandal in Bohemia. Irene Adler is probably, yeah, she is the woman. You cannot remember a Sherlock Holmes story without remembering her as well. Five Orange Pips, The Blue Carbuncle, The Speckled Band. I actually found that very fascinating, and it had that element of slight scariness. You were like, oh, and personally I have a phobia of snakes, so again that added to that scary element as well. And I really liked the way I really liked the way the 1984 series actually adapted The Speckled Band. It was actually very, very well done. The Beryl Coronet, The Yellow Face. I mean, if you remember the latest season, it had the word snobbery there, and you kind of get where they took that inspiration from. The Naval Treaty, The Final Problem, of course. Although, did you think that as a story, The Final Problem was very lacking? As a story, it felt a very dissatisfying account of the great fall of Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty, them locked in a battle and falling off the edge. That was, I don't know, I just felt it a little surreal and a little disappointing, I guess. If you're going to kill off a character, although Conan Doyle has done it spectacularly by having him fall from this high steep cliffs, locked in battle with his arch enemy, but still the events leading up to it and its eventual conclusion, it was a little, I don't know, incomplete. Actually, when you look at Anthony Horowitz's account of rewriting or reimagination of Moriarty, it was, yeah, he's talking about that. He's talking about this idea, okay, basically, that's the thing. Didn't you think that there were gaps in the narrative? Didn't you think that there were certain things that I think Conan Doyle could have elaborated upon? Of course, The Hound of the Baskervilles, another one of my favorites. The Valley of Fear. Oh my god, that was amazingly written. I really like the way they wrote The Valley of Fear. Yeah. The Dying Detective. I really like The Dying Detective as well. Mazarin Stone. So yeah, these are some of my favorite stories and favorite novels of Sherlock Holmes, and I will be continuing with the mid-June roundup in the next video, where I will be talking about the Bailey's list over there.